Okay, let me, oops. So today I wanted to meet with everyone, with my peers, just to have a conversation about something that I think we're all dealing with, and probably more of us than not will be able to identify with some of what we touch on today. And that's anxiety and how it manifests in people who are, high achieving or high performing. I'm going to talk primarily about adults. That, and full transparency, when I did this, it's been a few months since we had arranged it, and my focus was adults. I do private practice with adults, and I'm an adjunct at EMU. But now I'm also a school social worker back in a building, and I'm in a K-5 building post quarantine. And as I was reviewing my slides, I said, wow, like this isn't just an adult issue. This is something that I am absolutely seeing in a K-5 building, and and even more so than just in, high achievers or high performers, anxiety in atypical situations. So, it doesn't look quite like what we're used to. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that too. And I want to know what you all are doing and thinking. So is there any way, I've done this 100 times, I should know this. Um, I was looking in the chat where people are. Can we get an idea of how many people are either like private practice or direct service? Can we do that? Or can we get hands? I'm not sure. No, thank you. Okay, private practice, private practice, integrated health. Nice. Private practice, private practice. Okay. Okay. So, okay, then I feel comfortable kind of sticking to what my original intent was. I see a lot of private practice. Okay, great. Okay, private, great. Okay, so what we're gonna touch on then as private practitioners, just a working definition. Um, I'm not sure, was that me? Okay. Um, Typically, we're looking at this through the lens of GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder. And we can talk a little bit about some of the um, other options. I know clinically, in a hospital setting, we have some catch-alls as well as some other avenues that we can take. And we're going to look at how it can show up in the workplace and relationships, because we want to talk about those atypical presentations where when we do an intake, it might not look like something, but the more we talk and build a relationship, we begin to see some patterns. And then we're going to touch on some barriers. And this is where I really want to spend probably the bulk of my time, because we want to talk about intersectionality and how that impacts accessibility and recognition of anxiety in the sense of needing like clinical support, especially in marginalized and at-risk communities and the BIPOC intersections. And then we're going to talk about treatment. And I'm sure most of you have already guessed we're going to talk about CBT a bit. That is one of the most effective interventions, specifically the cognitive restructuring piece. Some people use exposure therapy as well. That's not something that I use a lot of, but if some of you do, I would love to
recording your progress.
Your input and your feedback. And then we're going to talk about resources and then some ethical considerations, because that's what we always bring it back to, our code of ethics. So if you all are ready, we will get started. I see hands. Was that for the private practice question? If you have questions, please put it in the chat. I'm gonna try to kind of toggle between the chat and the actual slides. So hopefully I'll see everyone. Okay. Okay, what is it? Generalized anxiety disorder. So we know that when we're assessing, we're looking for the key pieces as outlined in the DSM. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this part only because I know that everyone is already really well versed in that. And I know that time is at a premium, and I really want to get to the interactive piece. But just for the sake of the framework that we're going to look at, a key point is that time frame. Is it at least 6 months? And the other piece is it excessive? And this is something that it might take a little more digging to get to, because initially it may not look like it. You might have somebody who is working an 80-hour week, but if you through conversation you figure that a lot of that is them like revisiting things or constantly revising things, and you begin to see that it might be excessive compared to what's actually needed, that is another indicator that they may be in need of some more support. And then the part about the ability to control it, we want to look for coping mechanisms that might be atypical as we get into it in the workplace, especially that'll become more relevant. And then we know the physical indicators. That's something that I see come up a lot. I have people talk about a lot of like back pain or neck pain, muscle pain. And when we begin to talk, they're like, oh, I never thought of that as being related. Oh, you're having audio issues?
I can hear you okay, LaTiece.
Okay, hold on. No, they stopped seeing the share. Okay. Can you see it now? I closed it and reopened it.
Yep, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I apologize. Okay, let me back up a little bit.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. I am so sorry. Okay. So just to review the agenda again, we're going to talk about that definition. I just touched on some of that. And next, we're going to talk about how it can show up in the workplace and relationships, because that's where we're going to see some of those atypical presentations. And then we're going to touch on barriers to treatment, and then treatment strategies with that focus on the cognitive restructuring, and then resources, and lastly, the ethical considerations. How many of you are dealing with clients who present with anxiety issues that are high achievers? I've seen a lot of it kind of spring up lately online. It's been my niche for a while, but I am beginning to see more of clinicians actually saying, like, this is what we're here to support. Can you all tell me? Can I see some hands, maybe? Okay. 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 And what are some, I kind of want to do this a little differently. Is it okay to allow people to speak, Danielle?
Absolutely.
Okay, only that might make this easier because I'm trying to toggle between the
Sure.
I think that might be how the screen sharing may have gotten interrupted. So when you think about generalized anxiety disorder and how it might present in a client that is high performing, what are some of the things that you all think of?
I've been seeing more disrupted sleep, where they're having, it may be that they're having trouble falling asleep due to racing thoughts or anxious thoughts, or it can even be that their sleep is being disrupted where they're waking up in the middle of the night experiencing to-do lists that they realize they forgot to do something the day before, or worried they forgot to do something.
Okay. That is the perfect segue. Because some people can get to sleep easily, but staying asleep is a different thing. And so sometimes when we, in our intake processes, I know that we can ask questions where someone who has just kind of gotten accustomed to feeling a certain way, they don't think anything of it when they're checking boxes, and that is actually a really good one, because they'll say, oh, I get to sleep. I go to sleep at the same time every night. And so then, that deeper dig that I was saying, like, we have to sometimes pull to keep going. Are you staying asleep? Are you waking up feeling like you've rested? What was the quality of your sleep? So that disturbance can also be a qualitative thing, not just a quantitative issue. And so we're going to talk about the workplace, because, a good night's sleep makes all the difference, And high performers, we see people and we sort of categorize them in certain ways. And I'm guilty of this as well. We have people who may come across as a workaholic. We, always have that person on the team who's a bit of a perfectionist that, keeps everyone else in line and they go over everything that we've done. And then we have that colleague that might always seem indecisive. And then we have some people who have some inconsistent social behavior. So they might be, all cylinders firing at a staff meeting, but they may not be, the type that joins in on the lunch things or the after work things. And that can come from a number of things. But when you have someone who has been anxious all day, their battery might just be tapped out by the end of the day, or they might need that lunch time to recharge. So when I'm talking with clients, what does your day look like? And, they might say, oh, we have team meeting first thing, and then we have lunch. And I'll say, how do you usually spend your lunchtime? How do you use lunch? Do you take a lunch? What do you do at the end of the day? Like, what does the end of your day look like? Do you have any digital boundaries with work? Is your work email attached to your phone and it's something that you're checking all night? Do you have a fixed schedule that allows you some downtime? Or is there anybody that you talk to each day to sort of debrief with? And it's when you do those, those deeper digs that you might start to see some patterns, especially with digital boundaries. I have some high performers who I literally think they work 100 hours a week. Because even when they're not actively working, they're accessible. So there's always that secondary dialogue going, like, oh, I hope everything's okay with that project. Let me check my email, check my phone to make sure nobody's reaching out. And so those are the questions we want to make sure we're asking. Has anyone experienced anything similar with clients, like that lack of digital boundaries and that constant work?
Oh, sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I see a lot of the I can't say no.
Mhm.
And that shows up definitely. And like, I don't know how to balance, my time off and my work time. They just blend together because, I feel this need, that perfectionism to like do everything all the time. And I've never had really maybe even permission to say no in my life. So, or had the expectation on me that I have to do everything by myself. That comes up a lot with my people and their anxiety. So even just asking them, like, how would you feel about just saying no, instant, like you can see it on their face, like, ugh, I can't do that.
Yeah, and it's always interesting how we know when we start talking about uh, that inability to say no, what that ties back to, whatever event or dynamic that we experienced when we were younger that sort of set us up for that way of being. Is definitely an opening to make some connections. Like if this is your work dynamic, how is that reflected in your personal life, right? The other piece that I'm going to touch on, and it's in the middle, is the imposter syndrome dynamic. And I put it in the middle, but I'm going to get to that. I'm going to come back to that piece because I think that as we talk, I would like for us to have a discussion on how, as clinicians, we can maybe support each other and supporting our clients as well as supporting one another. Because, I belong to some groups, and in the last few months, that issue for clinicians ourselves has been coming up a lot. So I'm gonna touch a little bit. I did a slide on how it shows up in relationships as well. And we're going to come back to this one too, because I want to stick with that work piece where you mentioned the inability to say no. So I'm going to mix up the slides just a little bit. Okay. So when we look a little deeper at the perceived upsides of high performers and people who are high achieving that may be struggling with anxiety, often they look outgoing. In the workplace, they're often the go-to person. Many times they appear cool, calm, and collected. There are doers, they always have it together. They're good with systems. They can be natural leaders. They're often passionate, driven, and they produce. And this brings us back to that piece about not being able to say no. It's an issue of just because you can doesn't always mean that you should. So the downside to that is that if you talk to them, sometimes you'll see that they have bouts of procrastination. And so they have those bursts. And I know that this is something I'm guilty of. I can have something to do, a big task, and I can't get to it until it's almost like the final hour, no matter how many times I might get started. I have to keep doing that. In the workplace, they can be, someone who may be seen as stoic. That's another presentation. Like they're just sort of pushing through. You mentioned, I can't remember the one who spoke about the sleep disturbance, the racing minds and thoughts. Those are things that show up, especially in down moments. And so some people cope with that by staying busier. And then nervous habits, hair pulling, rocking, doodling. I have a colleague who has to chew gum all the time, and he jokes that he stills his mind by moving his body. That motor activity sometimes can help with the racing thoughts. You're going to see people who are overthinkers and who, may need more reassurance or more reminders to be present, because sometimes they're thinking so far ahead all the time that they're not able to be present. And with those cases, I try to do a lot of mindfulness work, because it is about being patient with yourself and gentle and learning to be in the moment. Something that I've seen increase, especially lately, I'm not sure what's like trending, but this social comparison. We know now that social media does have an impact on the mental health of those using it, and that social comparison. I'm even seeing that, in the school setting with, the pre-teens, the late adolescents that I work with. It's a lot of, well, so and so has this, or this person does that, so I was just trying. And it's interesting how quickly that can become an issue. You might find people ruminating, or just, they may say, well, I'm fine except for when, and they have, a loop that they kind of get stuck in. What are some other ways that you all are seeing the downside of that high performing anxiety? There it is. And how we look at the world, definitely. Can some of these qualities be found in great workers' persons? Absolutely. And even if, the person is, the anxiety is what we would, deem unmanageable or in need of extra support, they're still a great person. They're just a great person that might be struggling with A, B, or C. Yeah, I see a lot of procrastination as well. Yes, staying late at work. That circles back to what I had mentioned in the beginning, that some people do work an 80-hour week, absolutely. But sometimes when you dig a little deeper and you see what's keeping them there, it may not necessarily be the work, right? Yeah, what else are you all seeing? Are you seeing any, like very clear, concrete indicators, like when we look at imposter syndrome, that fear of being found out, or of making a mistake that makes you lose it all? That fixation on, it's like a very future oriented fixation that keeps you from being able to be in the moment. And so you're constantly planning, and then you're trying to plan for every outcome. That's kind of how that anxiety works, right?
I'm also seeing an increase in burnout among people working in helping professions, because you're already dealing with secondary trauma, but then when you're also dealing with increased anxiety, there's a lot of cycling about whether or not this is the appropriate job. And then, I mean, when you're working in a helping profession, you're already dealing with the stress associated with your feelings of responsibility. And then when you have anxious thoughts that are making that weigh on you more, I feel like it's increasing burnout.
Yes. Compassion fatigue and burnout are definitely on the rise. I'm in a building full of teachers, and my practice is virtual, so I do telehealth. So I had sort of been in the house since summer of 2020, and so now I'm back in a building, and I'm seeing that burnout, that fatigue, and I have a good team. I think that I spend a good deal of time also trying to support the staff as well as the students, because if the adults are not in optimal conditions, they're not going to be able to, work well at their full potential. I'm sorry, I'm going through the comments. Leaders who become frustrated that, yes, and this might be a piece, someone made a comment, leaders who become frustrated that others are not working at their around the clock style. This might be something that comes up when we do some of that deeper digging. So you're going to talk about relationships, right? Like as you get to know your client, how was this week? Did anything happen? And you're going to start to see those patterns. Like, are they often commenting on how others, aren't contributing or aren't, doing everything that they could be doing? And those, it could be that they're just not, but you also want to dig a little bit to see, could this be your anxieties and how you cope with them versus how other people might have their own work style. I thought I heard someone. I thought I heard someone was going to comment on that. Yeah. So we also want to look at time. Like, how do they spend their time? Someone who prepares a lot. And I think that was mentioned in the comments too. Someone commented, Jennifer Schwartz, that she has a client who has a really interesting combination of procrastination and perfectionism. Can you share about that? Jennifer Schwartz, I don't know if I know we're all at work right now, so I'm not sure if she's able to.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I work in an adolescent health clinic and see kids between 12 and as old as 25. So something that I have one or two clients that I'm just kind of interested in is like right now I have one patient in particular who has a great deal of perfectionism and she doesn't want to turn in any schoolwork that isn't perfect. So she sometimes ends up with failing grades or ends up like going late to class or like she had a presentation that she didn't want to go to because she was afraid her presentation wasn't absolutely perfect. And so it's like she will avoid any kind of potential like brush with imperfection.
Okay.
So it looks like putting stuff off because she doesn't think that she can make her assignments perfect. So she doesn't want to do her homework because she's afraid it won't come out perfect. But so we're having some cognitive dissonance around that, like, if you don't turn it in at all, it can't be perfect. Like you get a failing grade, but that's where she's at, that she would rather fail than try and have it not be perfect. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. When we look at, the functions of behavior, one of them is the avoidance of failure. And, in situations where it's compounded by anxiety or depression for that matter, you definitely see an increase in avoidant behaviors. I see a bit of that with my upper elementary students as well. I would love to, chop it up with you offline about that as well, because we have some strategies that we use to support that struggle that we've been finding beneficial.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. is anyone seeing any of the, especially those who work with adults, is anyone seeing any of the social comparison come up, as far as like people feeling that they have to have achieved a certain level of success at this point, or feeling anxious that they haven't or that they won't, for that matter? Is anyone seeing that?
I've definitely seen a lot of the procrastination, anxiety around like, what goal do I go for? Because it seems like everyone around me is so much farther ahead than me, where all these people in my life are doing things that I wish that I was doing, and kind of like maybe I think I should, accelerate my career in this way, but maybe I need a new hobby. And like what we kind of learned was that because they were so fixated and on like everybody else's achievements, and kind of matching those, that they were having procrastination because they were going for goals that they didn't actually want. They thought that they needed to do them because of the people around them. But and that was like, oh well, you're probably procrastinating because you don't want to actually take the steps to achieve this. This isn't actually something you want. This is something you think you should do because people or society says that you need to do this in order to have value.
Yeah, and that leads to like so many distorted perceptions. Even, the concept of success it's transient. So it's we sometimes we talk about how it's like the positive punishment. Like you get the thing and then the thing changes. So you can't enjoy it as much as you might have expected to. Because as soon as you reach the goalpost, it moves. Someone said that they've seen an increase need to be busy. Differentiating towards busy and productivity has been something that has come up for me in practice. Yes. And the flip side of that, even the self-care has become a point of rumination for a lot of people, because it's like, am I self-caring right? My self-care doesn't look like this person's, or it doesn't look like that. So then it can become another point of fixation. Okay, let me get over to the next. Okay, and that brings us to some of the hurdles or the barriers. There's a lot of stigma as far as we've come, and I know I love how the mental health conversation has grown and evolved in recent times, but there still is a lot of stigma. And something I see pop up a lot during my initial few sessions or in the intake, particularly with people who are, high achieving or high performing, is, that social comparison. Like, I have no reason to be anxious. I have no reason to not be good with the way things are. Or if some of their ruminations are about competency and, bringing in imposter syndrome, admitting that they are struggling can be a hurdle for them, because they're going to feel like it confirms that maybe they shouldn't be there. Yes, someone commented that someone else always has it worse, and that quickly invalidates you. So those are the things that you're gonna want to look for and sort of ask about when you're having those initial conversations, because I've had clients who will say, well, I know I don't have anything to be worried about. I know that I have a great job. I have a house in a nice area. I have this, I have that. And it will be so focused on those factors that negate it, that they don't talk about the fact that they don't have close friendships, or they don't have much of their identity that exists outside of work or a certain relationship that they pour a lot of energy into, or they don't have a hobby. They can't tell you how they relax or things that they enjoy. They don't eat regularly. I've seen, a lot of I have like stomach issues. Okay, is that somatic, or is it a medical issue, or is it that I've done this when I'm very fixated on something, I don't remember to eat. So those are all things that we want to make sure we're asking, truly open questions, and really allowing spaces for what might seem tangential and a bit of an aside to sort of come through so that we can help them look for those patterns. Another thing is that sometimes people are like, it's worth it. If you, what is it, go hard or go home, and if you want the thing, you have to do the things to get it. And so it gets framed like that might be the sacrifice, that might be the cost. So, I try to listen out for that too. And that will come up again towards the end when we talk about the importance of cultural humility. It in our code of ethics, it says cultural competency, but some of that is so nuanced that I think cultural humility is a more effective approach, because it's being open to what we don't know, and being open to learning that, so that we can see different ways that the same issue might present between groups of people, and how it, certain expectations might impact how we present. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of cultural humility. And then, lastly, that successful but miserable piece. We're so pressured to have it all, but so many of us don't feel worthy. Or if we think we've gotten there, we don't want to seem ungrateful. And that's something that comes up. I had some questions made. When we think about people who are diagnosed with, we'll say, generalized anxiety disorder, about how many do you all think are what we would consider high performing or high achieving? Throw out some percentages. I just want to see where we are with that. Oops, I almost gave the answer. Okay. So, okay, 65, 75, 25, 50, 30. Okay. So I found a really interesting stat. It says about 18%, or roughly 20, are gonna fall into that high functioning category. And that's why I said it might be the invisible challenge, because exactly, we know that this number is higher, right? We know that. So that's why I was saying it really is an invisible challenge, because this is just saying that like 1 out of 5 people who have anxiety are recognized as having anxiety. And we definitely know clinically that number is, yeah, because, again, a lot of us in the field, I'm very open. Part of what inspired me to go into anxiety management was my own struggles that I had. And then I was fortunate enough to pass that along with my dimples onto one of my children. So, it's something that definitely I know goes, unrecognized. So let's talk about the whys. Like, we are living in some wild times. There's so many things. And I'm gonna tell my age on this quote that I put up here, but that's okay. And I actually said this to, yes, people are definitely feeling immobilized. And when they get stuck, they get quiet. And that's how it goes unrecognized a lot of the time. Absolutely. But I said this to one of my adult sons yesterday. And he, of course, had no clue what I was talking about. But I said, it really is like the jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from growing under. We have so many things coming at us simultaneously right now. And as the world is more connected and global, the things that can feed our anxieties and worries and ruminations have also grown. So, there's still everything going on with COVID. There's still everything going on with COVID, and our that intersectional piece, monkeypox. For some communities, it was more of a concern than others, which was I had issues with that, but it's a concern for everyone. But it was sort of framed that way. And then we have a lot going on with politics. The mass shootings, social movements around Black Lives Matter, reproductive rights, our economy, and just globally, war, environment. Absolutely, like there's so much going on right now that I think a lot of people sort of reach their tipping points. Exactly. And the helpers, I work with a lot of like physicians, teachers. They are definitely experiencing like secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, burnout, and so many of them have said, like, I never thought I would need to talk to someone about it, because you sort of know what you sign up for. But we've been hit with so many things, and at the same time, it's unprecedented. And so we really have to work at normalizing and supporting those outcomes that we're having. It's okay to not be okay. And so options. I'm an options person. This is where I want you guys to chime in. As I said earlier, I do a lot of CBT, specifically around that cognitive restructuring piece. I also do a lot of exercise, and I try to, tailor it to the client. Some people are very in their bodies and some are not. So, some I'm going to help them look up kickboxing classes. I have some who are taking burlesque classes, power yoga, whatever that might be. I found a really cool chair yoga program that I've shared with a few people who are a bit more sedentary. But what about you all? What are you all doing with these clients? What are your ways of supporting them that you're finding effective? Or yourself, what are you doing that's helpful?
I've been using some acceptance and commitment therapy, actually. that has been something that I find that most clients, whenever I bring it up, they first don't really like it because it's a lot of like, you have to kind of accept that we're going to have bad feelings in
Mhm.
life, but we're not going to push them away. We're going to kind of bring them in and kind of learn how to live with them and all of that, which most people are like, no, I don't want to do that. Teach me how to not feel anything bad.
Right.
But it's kind of bringing that perspective into the practice that I think changes a lot of things for people. And I found it to be really, really helpful, but also in combination with, doing a lot of mind body stuff and, connect with your body, because the amount of people that I also have that have no idea what their body even feels like is
Yeah.
like all of them. So that's been really, really helpful.
Yes, yes, yes. I have a colleague who does a lot of ACT, and we sort of double up on things. Yes, that values piece can definitely help with movement. Um, and it's interesting that you brought up the physical piece. With this population of people, I found that they do have a lot more of the physical stuff, but they tend to be less self-aware about that. So definitely, I do some progressive muscle relaxation, helping them to identify and understand what stress and tension feels like. Because again, some people have felt a certain way for so long. Except ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. Um, yeah, it's something that they've grown accustomed to, and for so many people, it started when they were in school as children. They, if that expectation is, a certain level of achievement, that the tight shoulders, that's something that they're accustomed to. Um, the the headaches can be something that they're accustomed to. I'm seeing some really awesome uh, strategies in the comments. Employing methods to focus on values is helpful. Walking is free, yes. We know that connecting with nature can absolutely be meditative, and it also gets the endorphins going. Yes, that's a really good one. Okay, so resources. A lot of my clients are like, they're very like heavy thinkers. And so, whereas with some clients, I might do uh, certain interventions that are more like experiential, I've noticed that a lot of them, they want information. Like that's how they process things. And so I try to give them as much information as I can so that when we're doing the work, they can have that background. And it really does. I found it to be really effective. So, I have clients who are like, well, I came across something about DBT, or I came across something about EMDR. Um, and I'm like, okay, let's see what resources we can find. Uh, some people think of anxiety as only being like worry, but I tell them a lot of it is that sort of anticipatory dread that we just shrug off because it's so common. But I like to refer them to the organizations that I listed, and then some BIPOC resources that I like. These are my top three. The Asian Mental Health Collective, the Black, yes, thank you. Jessica, oh, your name disappeared. Thank you, Jessica. She just shared uh, LatinxTherapy.com. I love it. Thank you so much. Black mental health therapists and inclusive therapists, those are some resources. This is wonderful. And then some people, knowing that they're not alone in their experiences and, helping them to normalize it. There are some lived experience resources. as well as some podcasts, others, but these were the three that came up for me. Sanity Break, The Mighty, and Elephant Journal. And again, like sometimes there's just something really powerful in knowing, once you know that you're not the only person to go through a thing, it makes getting through that thing feasible, um, and knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect to be good. That's part of that ACT, moving the value or shifting the values. So yeah, this is my short list. And then the last piece I want to touch on is just, again, we have our values as social workers. Oh, okay, hold on. Somebody shared a really cool resource that I'm unfamiliar with. The Finch, like the bird, Finch, FINCH app, is a self-care app where you have a pet. There's a lot of breathing exercises, meditative sounds, journaling techniques, etc. This app is also fun for adolescents or teens because you can dress them and name your pet and watch them grow. Really cool. I'm definitely going to look that up as soon as we finish. I love it. I can use that here with my tiny humans. Thank you. We have our values. Like we're here for social justice. We're here to destigmatize mental health challenges. We are here to uphold the dignity and the worth of individuals. That is going to help us move them towards negating some of those distorted perceptions that may come with the ruminations or imposter syndrome. And we believe in being competent. And this brings me back to that cultural competence piece, and our commitment to the field and service is that we are going to be open as much as we are giving. We are going to be learning as much as we are teaching in an ongoing way. I have a large demographic of clients where they've told me that, for their family, it's engineer or doctor. That's it. Like there's no in between unless there is like something prohibitive. And that messaging from early childhood on, that looks very different. That's someone who's going to look very different from someone who maybe came from a low SES background, and their worry is more of, not being worthy of being there. But they're both presenting with anxieties. They're both presenting with challenges and need support. And that's the beauty in what we do. We stay open so that we can be what's needed. And I know that, some of those conversations, again, cultural competence is absolutely necessary, but I feel like the level up is that cultural humility piece, and that it strengthens your competence when you can say, I know that I don't know a lot. Help me understand you, help me support you. Yes. I have 4 sons as well. Karen shared that she's always encouraged her son to be the best in whatever he decides to be. Yes, as long as it's not illegal. Yeah, and I've done the same. But again, I have one who got the dimple and the anxiety. He is computer engineer. Spends as much time worrying as he does working. So, 1 out of the 4, just sort of, some of us are a bit predisposed to it, and some of us, it's conditioning, some of us, it's environmental, but it's all valid, it's all relevant, and it all needs support. So I know that we are running out of time. is there any way that we can share emails to kind of support each other in practice? And the one who, yes, see, this is what we need. Though Jennifer, I think, at the corner in Ypsilanti to talk about working with the adolescents. Is there a way we can share email addresses? I'm gonna put mine in the chat. And please reach out. I've been talking with some peers just about maybe having a monthly gathering at a coffee shop or a quarantine. I did those during when COVID first started, some virtual tea time where we just all sort of talked and collaborated and supported each other. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, great. Hopefully, Danielle, we can keep the chat. I don't know. Hope so.
Yes, I can make sure you get any contact information that you need, LaTiece.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And please feel free to share resources. Maybe we can, support each other as we navigate all this stuff